And now, Victoria,
Yes,
ready?
ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And welcome, everybody. So happy to have everybody here joining us with our science news. And I'm going to begin with an article about volcanic hotspots. And with just a little background info, a hotspot is a magma plume that's erupting into a continent. So when there's a plate sitting on top of the hotspot and there's an eruption, then you have um, new earth formation. If it's erupting underneath the ocean, then those are called seamounts. And those are just enormous amounts of surface area. And I think it's the largest habitat on Earth is formed by seamounts. But this article begins, volcanic relics scattered through the Australian landscape are a map of the northward movement of the continent over a hotspot inside the Earth during the last 35 million years. And so this is discussing how amazing it is that this research, what they've learned through studying what was created by these hotspots. The University of Queensland researchers, Dr. Tamini Tapu, Associate Professor Teresa Ubide, and Professor Paulo Vasconcelos, discovered how these relics reveal the inner structure of the Australian volcanoes and became increasingly complex as the hotspot's magma output decreased. So they have a timeline because they've got this chain of volcanoes, and they can study them all, and they can see the oldest, the youngest. And so Dr. Altamini explains that these large volcanoes were active for up to 7 million years. They formed the basis of the study, and the hotspot was incredibly strong in its early stages, generating some of Eastern Australia's most beloved natural attractions. The volcanoes, he goes on to explain, the volcanoes formed as the continent moved over a stationary hotspot inside the planet, melting the land above it so magma could ooze upward. It's now, just breaking from that for a sec, it's now believed that, it used to be believed that hotspots were stationary forever, but now there's evidence that they do kind of peter out and that they do move a bit. So it continues to say, this hotspot and the movement of the continent left a treasure trove of volcanic landmarks in its wake, forming the longest chain of continental hotspots on the Earth along Australia's eastern side. And as you cast your eye along this massive chain, you'll find Queensland volcanoes such as the Glass House Mountains and Tweed volcanoes, which are shield volcanoes. Enormous long-lived lava outpourings in Tweed volcano may have weakened the hotspot and caused the younger volcanoes to the south to become smaller and shorter-lived. This indicates the changes caused as the continent shifted over the weakening hotspot. Associate Professor Teresa Ubide said that as the magma production waned, the volcanoes became internally more complicated, erupting lavas full of complex crystals. I did find another paper that is about research of these crystals, and they can tell more about the age of the volcanoes and also the origin of the magma. And I'll post that after I share this one, but there are people who collect the crystals from volcanic eruptions and then um, study this. There's liquid in the crystals as well. So going on, these little heroes hold the secrets of how volcanoes work inside and tell us that the late Australian volcanoes were full of magma pockets or reservoirs, Dr. Ubide says. As these cooled down and became more viscous, it became more difficult to generate eruptions, which may have been more explosive. We found that the arrival of new, hotter, gas-rich magma acts like a shaken bottle of fizzy drink, causing a buildup of pressure in the magma and eventually an eruption. He says that Australia's extinct hotspot volcanoes provide a unique laboratory for researchers to investigate processes leading to volcanic eruptions across the globe. The effect of erosion over tens of millions of years allows us to access complete sequences of lava that can be difficult to access in more recent volcanoes. So it's amazing. They can actually read the lava. It then makes it possible to reconstruct the inner structure of the volcanoes, sort of like opening a doll's house, which gives us a much better understanding of hotspot activity globally. This is particularly important given there are many active hotspots on Earth, including the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, and in other continents, such as the United States Yellowstone volcano. So here, I'm in Oregon, and we have Mount Hood, and that is a hotspot. And then as well, they mentioned Yellowstone, and then the Hawaiian Islands are a hotspot as well, but that erupts above the surface of the ocean. And there are about 40 to 50 hotspots that are known on the Earth right now. Continuing, volcanoes in these areas produce large volumes of lava and have an important role in the evolution of our planet and atmosphere. So having a real-world doll's house to play around in and observe variations with time and magma supply is very helpful. Our study shows the fundamental role of the strength of heat anomalies inside the Earth and in the evolution of our planet and its landscape over millions of years. So that's that.
Super interesting. So, like, essentially, they're reading the volcanoes, like eruptions, to find out, like, not only like what's causing it, but like, I guess how the volcanoes work from the material that's spit out from it. Is that
That's
like
exactly, yeah, exactly that.
that's
And they
kind of
have them all
wild?
together, yeah.
Like, I couldn't even imagine you can do that until now. You know what I'm saying? Like, like how, maybe this is just my ignorance in the topic, but like how much different stuff gets spit out of a volcano? You know what I'm saying? Like it all just looks like red ooze until it turns into black nasty crust. You know what I'm saying? Like this is kind of cool.
There's a huge difference because it can also be, for example, it can be if there's heating and then there's melting, so there's heating in the mantle, and the hot spot is kind of like a bulb and a spout. And so the magma can pour out and then create this, this mountain shape. Then the mountain shape, when it cools and it becomes dense, then um, it condenses, and then it what do you call it, drops in the middle. So then you get this volcano shape. That's one way that they happen. But so this is magma, but it could also be that there's heating underneath pre-existing rock. So then if that rock melts and becomes magma-like and erupts, then you're going to have a different lava flow. And then if you have something happening where it's slowly heating, then you'll have more gas involved, and the eruption. So, for example, Mount St. Helens, when that erupted, that was tons of ash. So that was completely different. It ended up, it was ash. It was just tons, like an ash flow coming out. It wasn't, for example, well, Hawaii isn't, well, that is a hot spot, right? That is hot spot lava. And so that's a different type of flow. It's more like clay-like, and you can see the lines of the cooling in it compared to a lava that is harder and will form a crusty surface and a crusty broken surface right away. So there's a lot of difference. It kind of depends on what the earth is cooking, you know, like the hot spot could be the Bunsen burner, and then whatever earth is on top of it is what is what also can explode along with the magma that's coming out of the earth. So Kirko, that's really cool that you mentioned that you didn't think of it as anything like that. But there's a huge variety in what comes out of a volcano.
That's super cool. Do you know if like that study thinks that you could use like the similar like process to like understand like otherworldly volcanoes, like ice volcanoes on some of the moons out there in the solar system and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
totally. I was reading about that it's suspected that there's an ice spot, excuse me, a hot spot on one of the moons of Jupiter that's melting through the ice as we speak.
super cool.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting. I don't know too much um about it, so I learned really when you shared this. Um, so thank you so much for that. Do you want me to switch to the next one or
Yeah, sure. Do you wanna take turns and you read one, or shall I keep going, or what would you like to do?
uh it's do you want to do the three and then I do the rest? Because then I have them kind
Oh,
of
continuity.
in order that way.
Absolutely, continuity. Let's keep going. Yes, indeed. Okay, this is really sweet. So they're all really sweet. Volcanoes are sweet. Everything's sweet. Okay, so this article is about synchronous movement in excuse me, that's my cat. Oh, sorry, I've got
Oh wait,
okay.
the
Yeah,
pinning didn't work, I see. 1 second. 1 second. There. There. Should be
are we
this is the one.
synchronized?
Yes, synchronized.
Good.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So this article is about synchronous movement, and they begin. Here's the summary beginning. Individual fish in schools scatter in unison when a predator is in their midst. Such precisely coordinated group movements and immobility during threats have long been observed in insects and mammals. Now, a brain pathway has been discovered that enables individual animals to rapidly coordinate a unified response with no rehearsal required. So, just a little bit of just fleshing this out a little bit. If we think about synchronous movement in animals, there's with what are they, swallows that do fly in what they call murmurs. I don't know if you've seen that. We have and also swifts. We have something in Portland here where in starting in September there's a huge flocks of swifts will suddenly take over the air and then start flying in a swirling pattern like a funnel pattern, and then fly straight down an old incinerator chute that's like a really skinny chimney. So the sky goes from black, regular sky, whatever color it is, then black because it's covered with these swifts, and then they funnel, and then they just pummel themselves down. It's unbelievable. So there's that, and then maybe you've seen sardines doing that, sardines schooling and then rapidly shifting direction. So this is what this is talking about, and even with people, there's research that shows with humans that we do synchronize with dancing and along to music, that a group of people may synchronize our breath and our cardiac rhythm. So there's something going on. But with schools of fish, they have pressure sensors on their lateral line, and that helps them stay in their school. And they have some fish they know their position in the school, so it is coordinated. Whereas birds, they will do, that is flocking. Flocking really means that any individual can take the lead and can change direction, and the rest will follow. So with this research, they they were studying, publishing recently in the print edition of the journal Biological Psychiatry. Virginia Tech scientists in the Fralin Biomedical Research Institute at Virginia Tech described how they studied synchronized immobility in pairs of mice and identified the underlying brain circuit responsible for this behavior. The study provides an identified target to advance research on the poorly understood brain activity that underlies coordinated group movement, and more broadly, social communication in general, which is compromised in a variety of human neuropsychiatric conditions. And I have an issue with this terminology here, but saying neuropsychiatric conditions such as attention hyperactivity disorder and autism spectrum disorder and social communication disorder. And I feel that that terminology will change in the future, and we already are using different terminology because speaking of neurodiversity does not, it's not ethical to term that a disorder. It's difference in communication, perception, etc. But I have a hard time with that word disorder. But continuing, examples of coordinated defensive responses in nature are numerous. Oxen, for example, welcome, Joyce. Oxen, for example, form a circle when they face a threat, said Alexei Morozov, assistant professor of the Fraulein Biomedical Research Institute and corresponding author of the study. Synchronization under threat is an evolutionary, conserved surveillance mechanism and occurs across species, including humans. This type of behavior has never been measured in a lab before, but now we can quantify this response and explore the underlying mechanisms. And I want to make, I just want to interject here that if you consider dance, and for example, the choreographer Merce Cunningham, he did actually explore the idea of synchronized movement without verbal communication or rehearsal. So in perhaps in the lab, this is the first time people know that it's being measured and quantified, but there are other examples of researching synchronized movement without verbal communication. Mice were trained to associate an auditory cue to a potential threat like a fire drill. The researchers studied parts of the brain that process and remember fear and social information, and they found that a specific connection between two parts of the brain, the ventral hippocampus and the basolateral amygdala, plays an important role in coordinating human behavior when faced with a threat. The information suggests a method to investigate these brain connections in more complicated situations. Although the study began with pairs of individuals, more research is needed to determine whether the same pathway is responsible for coordinating larger group behavior, such as huddling, in larger groups. This gives us a way toward deeper understanding of social behavior, Morozov said. At home and at work, people coordinate and exchange information with partners. Now we have a model that helps us understand the underlying brain pathway. This is among the most significant discoveries made in recent years on identifying the sites and the potential underlying mechanisms in the brain that mediate these types of important social interactions, said Michael Friedlander, Virginia Tech Vice President for Health Sciences and Technology and Executive Director of the Fraulein Biomedical Research Institute. While the pathologies in these behaviors are well characterized in human clinical populations, attempts at effective therapies have been hampered by a lack of understanding of which brain circuits and biological processes are impacted. Dr. Morozov and his team have designated and implemented an elegant series of experiments in mice to provide a potentially powerful base from which to advance this science and hopefully shorten the time to develop more strategically targeted therapies for humans. And there we are.
Yeah, this is so interesting, this work. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this has been shown like in different settings, but um, that they basically look at specific brain regions and so on that are involved in this model is really interesting. And um, I think it will be great to, they will need a lot of follow up, then maybe have some sort. It will be harder to do, but if you do brain imaging, you're kind of in a fixed place. You cannot really um, do things as a human. You can imagine doing things together. Um, Maybe research in primates or so will elude more if the same brain regions are still involved like in humans for this, or if more brain regions are involved. And then yeah, what mechanisms you can basically jumpstart to help people that maybe are not as good as or have like a neurodiversity to perform synchronicity like this. But Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, it is also interesting to me from dance experience. There's again going back to the idea of flocking. If you imagine a large group of people, flocking is exactly the same as in birds. The the directions are you're all going to move as a group and shift whomever is the leader with no planning in advance. And that what's necessary is to be observant, and the more people do this exercise of flocking, the better a group will get at it. So without brain imaging, we don't know how many of the cues are visible, or even if it's something such as, you know, temperature differences, or what is it? Is it, is it something in our minds that we're sensing? Um, what are the senses that we're using when we do flocking? But even that, or a simple mirroring exercise, doing that with somebody, and that is visual, but it's also that one person would be leading and one person would be following the other person's movements. And even doing that, people become more, you see that the ability to follow is improved over time the more people work together. It would be really interesting to understand what all the mechanisms are that contribute to that what are we learning, what learning is necessary to enable groups to be able to move together, or two individuals to be able to follow each other's mirroring, apart from visual, from following and being observant.
Yeah, and you know what? This also reminds me of um, when the author Howard Bloom was here in his book. He describes that for like a whole society, you always need kind of both. You need like or usually a population consists of a lot of people that just, follow this and go along, and then there's also always a few needed that don't uh, synchronize and look for different ways of doing things all the time to kind of trailblaze progress. I don't know if you remember that discussion, but it kind of is interesting about neurodiversity, that we kind of medicate away nowadays a lot of people that think differently. And I always think about that for progress we need different types of thinking and synchronization or not. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Or in with respect to ADHD, if you have in a classroom situation, children are expressing that they're not comfortable being required to sit still for long periods of time, then hopefully educators, which I am one, we look at that, and that helps change the classroom setting. That helps people remember that we need to incorporate movement more frequently, and we need to have less sitting down. And so, when there's somebody who's saying this doesn't work for me, then we serve everybody when we recognize that as important and necessary input that maybe everybody isn't willing to give or isn't able to give because their discomfort level isn't as great. And some students are able to conform, and those who aren't are the trailblazers that you were mentioning, in Katarina and Howard Bloom's example, that help to change things for the better.
When I heard this, you talk about this research article, kind of reminds me because my dad's a musician. Like when he would have like jam sessions, like you have all these different people, like pretty much essentially acting on their own accord, but it all kind of falls in together. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're doing their own thing, but at the same time, it's like synchronized. So it's kind of interesting because like I never really even thought about it how like nature does the same thing. That's super interesting.
Kyle, what was your example of that when you said nature does the same thing?
Like how you have like these synchronous movements. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know anybody who's, or I've never heard of any studies uh towards like that type of thing. Like I don't even know how you would study that to be truthful. Uh, but like that's the thing that popped into my head.
Right. Yeah, it's like a yeah, how do we have a jam session that works? You know?
Exactly. Like 'cause you think like by the I guess maybe by like common practice, like you want things to be on a chord, but like you look at like a large school of fish, it's damn near chaos. They're just kind of swimming. Like when you look at it, it just looks like they're kind of swimming in one general direction. Or like giant flocks of birds, it just looks like they're going one general direction, but there's so much more to it.
Right. And then what is it that we've learned when we're able to do it well? It is really intriguing. That's why I like this article. So, okay, here we go to the next one. I like the allusion to Hansel and Gretel, even though that's a really scary story. There's something about scattering those crumbs that's always very intriguing, and I like gingerbread. So, we begin. In the classic fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel dropped breadcrumbs. It's also a really fun opera. Dropped breadcrumbs while walking through a treacherous forest so they wouldn't lose their way. Rovers may one day. That wasn't the reason that wasn't the only reason. I think they dropped the breadcrumbs so that they could also be found. But anyway, rovers may one day use a similar trick to traverse other planets without losing their data. And so by rovers, they mean, like rovers that are on other planets, not just like traveling minstrels. Um, if a rover permanently loses communication during a mission, all the information that it has gathered is lost. To avoid this, researchers suggest using a multi-rover system in which a smaller rover piggybacks on a larger mother rover. The smaller rover would then venture into any especially uncertain territory, such as a cave or lava tubes, speaking of volcanism, deploying sensors the size of an AirPods case like breadcrumbs as it goes. The sensors could then communicate with each other via a wireless network and funnel any collected data back to the mother rover, theoretical physicist Wolfgang Fink and colleagues proposed February 11th in Advances in Space Research. As proof of concept, the team built prototype sensors that communicate via Wi-Fi. It's not that the smaller rover would be following the breadcrumbs back the way it came. Instead, we use the sensors for the data to find its way, communication-wise, out of the cave back to the mother rover, said Fink of the University of Arizona in Tucson. The technology could also be useful here on Earth, especially after a natural disaster such as an earthquake. A rover could be sent with deployable sensors into rubble where it's too dangerous for people to perform search and rescue missions. The breadcrumb-like communication network could allow researchers to cater to the essence of scientific exploration, Fink said, allowing rovers to overcome some of the constraints posed by tricky terrain. So I think this makes me think of the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria recently, and how people are going into rubble, and how helpful that would be if the path of the search and rescue people could just be followed, and whatever they were finding could be communicated right there in real time at the site, or even with these little AirPod case sized sensors, even if new information came up along that pathway of sensors, that could be communicated back to a central location as well. So that is the end of the article.
That's really it's a really good title, and it's really interesting hmm, to get an inspiration from a story like this. Um, um, it's to go to exploration of other planets, you know, from a children's story like this. That's really neat and a really great storytelling, I think. And I think this will, yeah, like ideas like this to make these connections, to connect those dots, like are really neat and a really beautiful way of making progress. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I was
Uh,
just thinking that in a way, I mean, it's not necessarily only a children's story because it may be just also, you know, embodying wisdom from long ago when they came up with that story. Maybe people use that for some or something similar in, you know, in their real life. Anyway, I'm done. Yeah, I'm noticing a theme here between these Hansel and Gretel's breadcrumbs, and then the synchronous movement of animals communicating with each other, and then the chain of volcanoes moving from one hotspot to the next and giving information about the Earth and the interiors. So didn't realize there was a theme, but apparently there was. So thank you.
yeah, that's interesting. It's I also realized that sometimes when I do things or write things, that all of a sudden you discover, you know, there was something you were kind of maybe solving a problem, and that everything you write or look up about is relatively related to that, and you only realize it after. It's really interesting. Thank you. Yeah, is it okay if we move to the next one? I have a bunch, but
Let's go. Let's move
let's
on.
say how many let's see how many we will manage to get. So let me post the link. I thought this one was pretty interesting. Let me see if it works. Yeah. The link looked so little. So okay, yeah. So nature nano syringes. I thought this was really interesting to harness bacterial machines for next gen medicine. Um, you know, bacteria, they have this system of delivering each other some information, especially to kind of become resistant to something, overcome something. They can inject each other with small pieces of DNA, and they are harnessing basically this yeah, this very ancient technology, if you want to say so, to deliver in a very specific way, a syringe-like way, injection. Um, and these bacteria that naturally binds to, for example, also insect cells, and injects a protein payload into them. Um, this is the type of bacteria they use, and the researchers use artificial intelligence tool AlphaFold to engineer these syringe structures to deliver a range of useful proteins to both human cells and cells in live mice, which is pretty exciting. Usually you read about this and it kind of stays in like cell cultures, but that they achieved this also in alive mice is really cool. There's a really beautiful example of how protein engineering can alter the biological activity of a natural system. So Josef Kreitz, the first author of the student in Zhang's lab, I think it substantiates protein engineering as a useful tool in bioengineering and the development of new therapeutic systems. The delivery do you have that lately, that your websites jump around from the advertisements? So annoying. Delivery of therapeutic molecules is a major bottleneck for medicine, and we will need a deep bench of options to. Now the website is gone. Um, to 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 get these powerful new therapies into the right cells in the body. By learning from how nature transports proteins, we are able to develop a new platform that can help address this gap. Um, So injection via contraction, symbiotic bacteria use roughly 100 nanometer long syringe-like machines to inject proteins into host cells to help adjust the biology of their surroundings and enhance their survival. These machines, called extracellular contractile injection systems, consist of a rigid tube inside a sheath that contracts, driving a spike on the end of the tube through the cell membrane. This forces protein cargo inside the tube to enter the cell. On the outside of one end, this injection tube, there are tail fibers that recognize specific receptors and latch onto them. You can then engineer that to have basically a system that naturally targets specific cells, and then also deliver specifically engineered proteins you want to deliver to human cells by re-engineering those tail fibers and the proteins you want to deliver. Yeah, I think this is really exciting. It's very smart. And it's also really impressive. They use a lot of different technologies. They use, engineering of proteins with AI. They use engineering of the bacteria so that they target the right cells and inject into the right cells. So what they want to do is mostly target cancer cells, no matter where they are, also in deeper tissues, and with different DNA cutting edge gene editing systems, they can do all that combining with AI. I think that's really cool. Okay, shall we move on to?
Yeah, sure. I was saying is this structure similar to, I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, the pilus or the pilus of the bacteria that they use to attach and then transfer genetic material?
Yeah. So there are
Is that
two ways they inject. They have that, and then they have a type of bacteria that inject also into other, like their host organism, also stuff. So and they use that type of bacteria. Yeah, but it's the same system basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're making use of that system is what this is talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the theme today could be what's old is new, or or there's nothing new under the sun, or something like that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm kind of looking at what is the difference between that and viral injection of genetic material. Although I mean the scale is different, but the
They can
mechanic.
inject proteins. The virus can only inject very small amounts of RNA or DNA, and these can also inject proteins. I think that's the
I see,
difference.
right. It is a huge scale. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, do we want to have a few bad news and then like a couple of bad news and then finish with the good
I
news?
forgot we did this last time too. Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of the bacteria forming a union, like a bacterial
Oh,
syringe
really?
union. Okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have always good and bad news, so let's get the bad stuff. Climate change, I think it's really also important to include that in our science news. And this paper or this article came out, which basically shows a map um, where they used basically a new computational model to find hotspots where compounding environmental and economic risk converge. And you can basically see this heat map. Um, this was done by MIT, a joint program on the science and policy of global change pinpoints specific counties within the United States that are particularly vulnerable to economic distress resulting from a transition from fossil fuels to low carbon energy sources. And by combining county level data on employment in fossil fuel industries with data on populations below the poverty level, the tool identifies locations with high risk of transition-driven economic hardship. It turns out that many of these high-risk counties are in the south central of the US with a heavy concentration in the lower portion of the Mississippi River. This tool, they call it the System for the Triage of Risk from Environmental and Social Economic Stressors platform. And it almost instantly displays these risk combinations on an easy to read visual map, revealing those counties that stand to gain the most from targeted green jobs retaining programs. And the drawing on data that characterize land, water, and energy systems, biodiversity, demographics, environmental equity, and transportation networks. The stress platform enables users to assess multiple co-evolving compounding hazards within the US graphical region, from the national to the county level. Because of its comprehensiveness and precision, the screening level visualization tool can pinpoint risk hotspots that can be subsequently investigated in greater detail. Decision makers can then plan targeted interventions to boost resilience to location-specific physical and economic risks. I think this is, it's kind of bad news because, I don't know, combined with article that came out, a study that came out, that we are most likely uh, not making the 1.5 Celsius increase. I think in the next 10 years we are moving over that if it continues the way it is right now. So, which I don't know if that's already included in this heat map, but what I think is really interesting is that you can basically check which factors are in which regions, and policymakers can then see, the highest risk factor of resilience to go down and hopefully address that. Um, so yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think that's good. I've often thought that, in some parts of the country there's political opposition to change because of the job situation. But if they were to, locate, green industries there, then it could make it a lot better. And, I was thinking politically speaking, but this is a better, scientific analysis to look at. It's not necessarily locating it in the most politically crucial areas, which also might be important to get things passed, but also in places where it's identified where it's going to be the most hardship. So sounds good.
Yeah, this room. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Katarina.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say this reminds me of something that's proposed and happening in Atlanta. I don't know if you've heard of Cop City, but there's this. They have a huge budget for Well, they want the public cost is 33.5 million to build this fake city next to a poor working community, which has been underfunded and under-resourced. And they're building. It's a police training facility. They propose a bomb detonating site to be placed near a juvenile facility, and it's hundreds of acres of the Wilani Forest, and which is the largest urban forest in the U.S. So it's if we're talking about climate justice, people really need to understand that environmental racism is happening, and that we need to look at this problem, exactly as you're bringing up with this map, doing this kind of triage, that it's talking about who is affected and where exactly, so that it helps people know, really what kind of suffering is happening. I think Kyle mentioned something about that in the chat. Yeah, how many people will suffer as a result. So it's yeah, Cop City is really something to know about and to speak up to your legislators about stopping. It's a horrible thing to imagine, destroying hundreds of acres of forest. And consider all the benefits of forest land to people and to our health, our mental health, our physical health, and destroying that in favor of creating a training facility for police.
Yeah, that's horrible. And we had a guest speaker here that showed how much it improves mental health to just spend half an hour in the forest walking around, and how the stress hormone levels and all kind of biomarkers improved by doing that, which was really interesting, and a really well done, with controls and everything, study from Berlin, the Charité, I believe. And another thing is also availability to switch to new modern technologies and renewables. Just in the city, for example, here in New York City, availability of charging cars on the street if you have an electric vehicle. If you have to drive like an hour to get to a charger because people live in apartments, and your apartment building, cheap apartment buildings don't have a garage, and the availability on streets to have chargers is mostly also in wealthier neighborhoods. All of this will make people not, excludes a lot of people from participating and moving on, and to renewables, and also having jobs in those areas. So it's been discussed here in the city. They want to improve that, but it's going really slow, and a lot of those charges on the streets don't work well. Anyways, it's a mess, and yeah, I hope we will address that, but we need to push, I think, people. So, and to move to a kind of positive study, how we could fix things. This study from Canada shows that if you have a higher tree diversity in a forest, it increases carbon storage and soil fertility. And when we have a lot of forests that are used for wood production, and the replanting tends to be kind of a monoculture forest. And the study in Canada that was done in Canada shows that many forests over long term can help increase carbon capture and mitigate climate change. by having a higher tree diversity. And the study was published in Nature, and it's the first of its kind to show the sustained benefits of tree diversity on a large spatial scale in terms of storing carbon and nitrogen in the soil. It reinforces the importance of biodiversity conservation in forests, um, and which is a very valuable tool in mitigating climate change, particularly in enhancing carbon storage. And when I when I read this, I thought immediately of our very recent speaker we had here that talked about uh, how microbiome changes with climate change, and also then carbon capture. He studies this in California, and then he has like this different lands where he creates this different environmental factors like droughts and so on, and shows that then different microbes survive, and that and with a lot of droughts, for example, a lot of microbes that uh, do this carbon capture, they kind of die, and the soil will be less fertile and also be a less effective carbon capture tool. And I wonder if we should invite these authors and kind of ask also the microbiome soil speaker that was here come and incentivize them to collaborate, because I would assume that this diversity increases also diversity in this soil microbiome, and that's why carbon capture is way more efficient. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Joyce.
Yeah. I don't know if many of you know Philip Owen, who has and he's in a lot of other environment rooms, and he always talks about, a tree plantation is not a forest. And he's in South Africa, and he says that there's these big eucalyptus plantations that they're, kind of advertising as being green and storing carbon, but that they really don't uh, store carbon anywhere near as well as the natural grasslands and the diverse, natural ecosystems. So that's a very, what you were talking about is a favorite topic of his. I'll put the name of his house in the chat, and anybody, and yeah, and he'd probably love it if you had those speakers come. Anyway, thanks. I'm done.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. Oh, go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah, sure. I think it was 2 weeks ago, the article that I shared about fungi, and it was called Mushrooms and Their Post-Rain Electrical Conversations. And we were talking about this, that there's it's the mycorrhiza that are connecting everyone's roots, and that they're both fungi are both internal to the roots and external, and they have different types of conversations that they enable for the forest. And that when you are doing a clear cut, or even removing old growth, that those relationships are destroyed, and they take hundreds of years to develop in layers. And so any finding is, any forest study is only going to support this. And the more that people look on these smaller scales, like, on the scale of just studying the fungi, the more it will prove what somebody has mentioned that we already know. Arlene has mentioned that, this is common knowledge for a while, and this is, if any indigenous population is asked about how their land works, anything that's being studied, anything that we're discussing has already been known. And so now here we are, just discussing it maybe in greater detail and in different types of data-driven ways, but yeah, it's all something that we know, and and it is wonderful to consider that, to consider that the trees are talking to each other through the sort of telecommunication of fungi.
Yeah, that was a really interesting article, and will have him here, the speaker that will talk about the study. I forgot which date. I have to look in the calendar, but it will be a really interesting room. And I wanted to actually do a different article, but since we are here talking about interconnected forests, I think we should discuss this one first, because um, this one is really cool. And it's also a very highly interconnected system that is actually a huge organism. Um, so, a sound artist eavesdrops on what is thought to be the world's heaviest organism in Utah. A huge group of aspens is considered to be a single organism. So, as I said, it's the world's heaviest living organism, a forest of one tree that is thought to take the crown. Now, a sound expert is listening into the quiet group in an attempt to hear its secrets. Known as Pando, Latin for I spread, the 40,000 genetically identical quivering aspens in south central Utah are considered to be a single organism, with the trees actually branches throughout to be connected by a shared root system. The upshot is a vast living entity thought to be thousands of years old that covers 43 hectares, with a dry weight of about 6 million kilograms, making it potentially the Earth's heaviest living organism. But it is also an organism in danger, with experts warning Pando is probably dying off due to human actions. Now, an acoustic artist has revealed how he has delved deep to uncover fresh insights into the tree. This project began with a question: what is the sound of one of the world's largest organisms? Um, said Jeff Rice, a sound artist in the presentation at the meeting of the Acoustic Society of America in Chicago. The endeavor was first just an art project for the nonprofit group Friends of Pando. I recorded pretty much everything that I could possibly record, Rice said in an interview. Um, and then looking for new ways of listening to the tree, Rice placed a hydrophone inside the hole at the base of one of the branches and lowered it down to touch the roots. It was just an experiment, and I honestly didn't think I would get anything. And when he put on his headphones, he was in for a surprise. In one recording made during a thunderstorm, an eerie, deep rumbling can be heard. What you're hearing, I think, is the sound of millions of leaves in the forest vibrating the tree and passing down through the branches down into the earth. Fascinated by the approach, the pair carried out an impromptu experiment. Audit pounded on one branch of Pando while Rice monitored the sound at the roots of another branch about 100 feet away. What we were doing was not science, it was just sort of exploration. While Audit's pounding was not audible through the air, a thump was detected through the hydrophone. That suggests that there's a connection between these different branches in terms of sound. What we're hearing is not just this one branch that we're listening to, but many branches around us. However, the results do not necessarily provide evidence of a connected root system, not least as the sound could be traveling through the soil. Professor Paul Rogers, an expert on Pando at Utah State University, who was not involved in the work, said it was not known for certain that the branches of Pando were connected by the root system, and welcomed Rice's acoustic work. However, it should be treated as an experiment at this time, which needs to be demonstrated via strong scientific support. For Rice, however, it seems his initial question has been answered. I think the sound of Pando is really the sound of all of the parts of it. It's the birds that are living in the tree, and it's the insects, and it's the wind and the leaves, and it's the vibration of the earth, and the potential sound of the roots. And so I see it as really a great way of understanding the interconnectivity of Pando and also soundscapes in general. I think this was really cool and kind of related to the fungi system, and maybe, if the guys that did the fungi system recording, um, if they would help them, that would be perfect.
That's a great thought. I love that. I mean, there is a lot to think about, like with respect to statics and resonance and, and how the acoustics works in there. And I guess they need to know what's connected to what, but couldn't they do that with, sonic resonance and yeah, I just love this thought. It would be nice to get a recording and play it in here. Maybe I can find it.
Yeah, I will definitely ask him in the discussion if he doesn't want to look into Pando next. Probably won't work, but because most of the time people are very specialized, but maybe he can provide some insights to the Pando Foundation how to do it, and they can then do this more in the scientific way. It would be really interesting.
I see a few links that say listen to the sound of the pando. So I'm when I find it, I'll play it.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I had way too many articles, so but two I thought were kind of really interesting and exciting. Well, interesting one and useful the other one. So, yeah, this will be hopefully very useful in the future. A lot of kids, these peanut allergies and other allergies can be really life-threatening, especially for kids. They don't know, if they're in a school that they're not careful, they don't know what they're eating, and then they get into these life-threatening situations and are surrounded by people many times they don't know what to do. And it's really traumatic for the kid. It's very worrisome for the parents because they every day they kind of fear, I send my kids to school or to a party, and I kind of am always afraid to let them go by themselves because they could just die from an allergy, I guess. So it's really stressful to have this. I have a friend, the kid is better nowadays, but it was really stressful for her to have a kid with these severe allergies. When the doctor said, they did the treatment, when the doctor said, okay, now it won't be as life-threatening anymore, like, she was like crying and so relieved. And so I think this will be really great if this works and won't be too expensive for people to actually use. So an experimental skin patch is showing promise to treat toddlers who are highly allergic to peanuts, training their bodies to handle an accidental bite. A peanut allergy is one of the most common and dangerous food allergies. Parents of allergic tots are constantly on guard against exposure that can turn birthday parties and play dates into emergency room visits. There's no cure. The only treatment is for children 4 and older who can consume a special peanut powder to protect against a severe reaction. The patch named Viaskin aims to deliver that kind of treatment through the skin instead. The major test with youngsters ages 1 to 3, help those who couldn't tolerate even a small fraction of peanut to eventually safely eat a few. Researchers reported on Wednesday. If additional testing pans out, this would fill a huge unmet need, says allergist Dr. Matthew Greenhart at Children's Hospital Colorado, who helped to lead the study. Um, yeah, so I don't know if I even need to say so much. It's kind of late, but yeah, I think this will be great for these very young kids and for their parents to not be constantly afraid that their kids will die from accidental bite of something. So, hi, Dr. Heidi, welcome. Oh, Joyce, please go ahead.
I was just going to say I was at a party where a little boy was telling people that his little brother had a peanut allergy. And you can imagine the little boy was, having impact and worry himself. And I think maybe the little boy was even more worried than the parents because he was the one who was going around telling people. Anyway, it's kind of scary for them. Yeah, thanks.
It's also helpful because it brings something like this helps to bring credibility to something that shouldn't need the assistance of increased proof of credibility. But how many times have you heard people make fun of people with allergies, peanut allergies, and complain about just the difficulty of making sure that people's allergy needs are respected. And I hear this a lot. I hear it a lot in schools, and as you're saying, it is life threatening, and it's so easy to be kind, and it's so easy and important to take a minute and make sure that people's needs are accommodated. So this is really exciting. Thank you for sharing this. Great to see you, Dr. Heidi. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Victoria and Katerina and Joyce. Yeah, you reminded me of something very important. Actually, it may not relate it to the skin batch and the allergies, but it's really important to raise the awareness. While Joyce talking about the little boy, very worried about his brother, I feel that health awareness, it's really important. It's a very strange cases nowadays. I'm doing some research for the public health, and some of the kids for parents actually overdose the antibiotics. They cause them diabetes because of the excessive use of antibiotics. So people not taking it serious sometimes, and I don't know how they get around. Sometimes, like in Australia, it's with prescription, and you can take antibiotics without prescription. But in some countries, they actually can go and get the antibiotic over the counter. And the research shows that people who are actually the parents with less information and the overdose over 3 weeks, the antibiotics, it's actually caused diabetes for the kids, unfortunately. And it's very sad. It's really, I was in tears when seeing those kids just because of the level, I don't want to say the level of ignorance and not just attending to the precaution that antibiotics are killers sometimes. Because what's happening on a molecular level, the antibiotic go and to the pancreatic cells and react with it as it's reacting with the bacteria, which is very sad. So I thought the health awareness, it's really important even for people who are not professionals, they are not in the medical field, listening to the news and updating themselves that it's really serious overdosing medications. It's really serious overdosing the antibiotic, which they feel that it's boosting their immunity, but it caused the opposite. And sorry for taking the stage too long, but maybe someone listening to us now and treat the antibiotics differently from now on. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. We appreciate you bringing that wisdom to the stage and sharing it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I agree that staying updated and like respecting, people's health, and health complications is really important. And I could tell you a lot of very stories of very ignorant people that were convinced that this health problem wasn't real. I mean, I have another friend. Our kids have a lot of allergies too, and they moved back to Germany, and their friends there, or like school parent friends, didn't believe in allergies. So they invited them for dinner and said, yeah, this is all, yeah, I respected all the allergy concerns you have, and on purpose put in all the things that the kid was allergic to, and the kid had huge complications and needed to stay in the hospital for a while because of that. And I could tell you a lot of stories of people. But anyways, to stay updated on health, to move this again to maybe a positive story. I didn't test this, but I know that Google has been collaborating with NIH a lot. They for many years now, they're allowed to go through all kinds of data sets that NIH has, um, from all kinds of clinical trials, and so on. And they've developed all these tools to design proteins and so on. And they unveiled this MedPalm 2. um, but as I said, I didn't try it out myself yet. Um, so what they wanted to address, they wanted to basically have an alternative tool for people that have health concerns instead of just Googling symptoms, because that's what most people do. And the fear that comes then with Googling symptoms via Google, that so this tool is supposed to be more reliable, that you can rule out dangerous diseases and unheard plagues, um, and search for the common cold you're probably facing. So that's how they claim it here. um, Google is replacing your regular Google search with a friendly artificial intelligence platform. And they unveiled this biggest project that they have of the year, known as Palm 2, like OpenAI's ChatGPT-4. Palm 2 is a powerful language model able to deal with code reasoning, multiple language, and huge amounts of text. And while language model technologies are being crammed into everything from cybersecurity to web search engines, and so on, this is supposed to make huge advances in the medical field. MedPalm 2 is the company's second version of an AI platform designed specifically to provide answers to medical questions. When tested on the United States medical licensing examination, the model scored 85.4%, in line with the knowledge of a medical expert. To turn this model into an expert, Google trained it on, other experts. A panel of clinicians from the UK, US, and India were given a long set of medical questions and scenarios. The model was then trained to answer questions in a similar way to these experts. The clinicians then cross-referenced the model's answers on a set of values, including a low likelihood of medical harm, alignment with scientific consensus, precision, and lack of bias. Of course, with an AI model, while an AI model can understand the logic of science and medicine, it isn't exactly great on the ethical or moral side of things. Further training was done to help the model align with human ethical values in an attempt to improve its bedside manner. Yeah, so while it is certainly impressive, doctors don't need to worry about losing their jobs just yet. This technology is still in its early stages. Google will first open up the model through Google Cloud, looking to get users' feedback on its ability. In the future, further capabilities could be added. Right now, the model is limited to understanding of text, but future versions could understand your medical records, CT scans, and genomic data. Yeah, I don't know if people think it's a good idea or not, but yeah, just Googling symptoms is not a good idea. And yeah, maybe it could help people stay updated on, their disorder, the kids' disorders, what's out there, to treat them better when they should maybe go to the doctor in a more educated way than just, Googling it. So I thought it was maybe good news.
I agree. I agree. Education is power. And we have all had that experience of Googling something and just becoming fearful and getting misinformation about something that doesn't really apply to what we're suffering. And I think if you're able to do research, if you're able to do research and learn, people are going to be able to get misinformation in lots of different ways that have existed before there was the Google search. So I would say that anything that adds to people's ability to educate themselves and put the power of their education in their own hands, then power of autodidactic learning is is real and strong, and I'm for it.
Yeah, and it makes me think of, I don't know how they handle it exactly, but, there's the story of how medical students end up feeling like they have every disease imaginable because they're reading about it so much. Uh, you know, and of course, when, a lot of diseases can be so many different things, anywhere from a fatal cancer to, something that just goes away on its own and be ignored. So I don't know quite how they balance that fear versus information issue. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, well, I can give an example, and also Kyle brings up an interesting question about privacy, which is something worth wondering. But for example, with hypothyroidism, the doctors do not tell people that you're not supposed to have. Well, you're not supposed to, that it actually hinders your medication. If you have hypothyroidism and you are medicated with thyroid hormone, with artificial thyroid hormone, and you have milk or any dairy product for breakfast or a calcium supplement within 4 hours of taking that medication, that you hinder the effectiveness of that hormone. So you're in effect taking a smaller dosage. Your doctor's not going to tell you this. I've spoken to lots of people, so that's my own informal data collection. But I would really challenge anybody, if you have friends that have hypothyroidism in any form, ask them, did your doctor ever tell you this? Or did a doctor ever tell you that taking taking Sudafed, for example, is not a good thing for people with hypothyroidism because it can cause tachycardia, which is terrifying. So those things are, if it, once you learn to do research in a responsible way and know that you don't want to scare yourself with thinking you have something that you don't. But again, we shouldn't let fear prevent the dissemination of wisdom. So the fear of something going wrong, it would be better to err on the side of arming people with wisdom, I believe, and I trust that to be true, because as I said, people can get misinformation in lots of different ways that have nothing to do with the internet. So yeah, so just that alone, just the ability to gain more information, if you're if you're willing and interested to do a little bit more research, cross-referencing medications before you take them, for example. I don't know if, I've had that happen where I've been prescribed something that should not be prescribed because of the one medication that I take, and that the physician didn't take care. So having that ability to take responsibility for our own health in that way is something that I support.
Yeah, and I used to, years ago, before the internet, I would ask the pharmacist for the package insert. And there's, when you get a drug, there's this long thing with very fine print. And you have to get used to looking at them and realize, though, that they're going to have a lot of stuff that you don't have to worry about, but it's still good to be able to look at them. But now you don't have to get this thing with a lot of really tiny print. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, and just having, since you said that, I have found that pharmacists love to be asked questions about medications and what they're prescribed for, and possible synergistic effects. I think because pharmacists have all their training, but they're not physicians, so they don't really get to use it in their field of work unless we ask them. And I found them to be really knowledgeable and extremely patient.
Uh, yeah, it's interesting because not sure how it is right now, but pharmacists in Portugal used to be really important, and it was also a public job, so you would get assigned a pharmacy, in places where you would need to have them. So they were kind of, for many people, especially in villages and so on, like the first person you go if something is going on. And they would be allowed to, give you, not antibiotics anymore, but a lot of things they were allowed to assess and then give to you. uh so I remember we would, first go to our family pharmacist. We would have like a pharmacist that knew all of our family, and ask him like if there was a rash or, like all kinds of things. We would go to him and he would tell us what we would need, or if we actually need to go to the doctor or not. So yeah, we would have a very good relationship with our pharmacist. He knew all of our family. So I don't know if that's the case in other countries too, but yeah. Anyways.
That reminds me of something that I'd read about comparing care that people receive over time from a family practice, from one doctor, compared to going to specialists, and that it was shown that the care and treatment are of a higher quality. And I can't say what the determining factors were, but we know how we feel when we feel healthy and right. Um, but that, but I wonder if that using this AI could be analogous to having one physician, because all of your data, even though doctors, compare data, but if there's some AI model that's collecting all of your history, all of your medical history in one place, and then you can access that, and then your doctors could access that, and you don't have to send it this and there and remember to have your records shipped over. Maybe that's something, sort of a byproduct benefit of this kind of model.
Hi.
Hello, Mohammed. Welcome.
Work. Thank you for this topic. I think it's really important to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. I think now they are starting to play an important role in medical diagnosis, treatment planning. I think at least as a dentist now, there are many FDA approved software has been released recently to aid dentists in the diagnosis of the X-rays and try to locate some pathosis. And it's really impressive how this technology is evolving. But at the same time, I would always say we should be a little bit cautious because, like I think the success of the software here is not to pass the board exam. Like this is not of the aim of the software. So when we are dealing with a disease and patient life, we should be a little bit cautious. And I think before progressing more into these technologies, usually we need to assess the accuracy and the reproducibility because, at the end of the day, you are dealing with someone's life. uh, I think we still have a lot of stuff in this thing. It's I think the what we have now in our hands is really promising, but many of the softwares and algorithm it's based on deep learning. Like it's depending on about how you are feeding the data to these models and algorithms. And actually, if you providing a case, for example, that doesn't have the logic and the sequence of the data that has been gathered or collected by the software, sometimes it could give you like a wrong like diagnosis or something like this. And definitely, this model has been trained on an English language based, like system. And definitely when you are dealing with a patient or someone else who doesn't use the same logic or the same sequence of language or expressions or something like this, the results could be different as well. So I would be a little bit cautious about the release of the version to people. And I think it's need first to be double checked, even if I know that now Googling the data over the internet, it's still biased and it doesn't give people the perfect answer. But still, there is no one taking the responsibility behind this. But if I'm releasing a platform that could give you a medical decision based on the data you are giving to me, I think the question is who's gonna take the responsibility of this diagnosis? Who's gonna be taking the responsibility of, even if it is not a diagnosis, who's gonna take the responsibility of giving such advice? I don't know. It's promising, it's amazing, but I think we need to be a little bit more cautious, and we need to do a lot of studies regarding the accuracy, reproducibility, the reliability, to be able to be sure that we are on a solid ground to move forward. I don't know. That's it.
It seems to me like it depends on how it is framed and how it is presented. Because I was thinking there's websites already, say like WebMD, or the Mayo Clinic has a website where they go through all these different diseases, and it's sort of like, it's up to you to how do you use that information. So I would think it's like how it's presented and framed, as long as people don't get the wrong idea about what it's really doing. um, just random Google searches, might be more harmful. But like you say, though, if the person is feeling as though they are getting a diagnosis, then that is a whole another story. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. There are many trusted websites that provide information about disease, like WebMed and other websites. But I would say they usually doesn't give the information based on what you feel. They usually give information about the disease, the prevalence. They usually the major, like therapeutic treatment lines, which is great. It's amazing. But they doesn't gather like information regarding what you feel or the signs and symptoms you keep complaining, and they provide you like a potential diagnosis. So I think there is a big difference here between just providing information about diseases as a general or gathering information and give you answer based on the data is collected.
I would think that the thing that's holding us back from progression is the human factor. All of us have something to lose. I mean, many of you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in education, so there's a lot to lose. Most, first 4 years are paying back the debt. So people are still in debt, and so that's why they wouldn't side with technology. Um, but technology's evolution is it's climbing the ladder faster than the brain is doing. We know this. We see this in technology. Uh, we tend to hold dear and true to something that we spent 20 years trying to grasp onto to have an equal voice with other individuals. And I think that it's going to smash us. I think it's going to make all these individuals with PhDs just go away. We're going to have to find other lines of work, physical labor that the machine can't do. I think that's one of the major variables. Sorry about the dog.
We love dogs. We love children. And I see, Katarina, thank you. I see a new article. Oh, this is amazing. Yes, please read it. Thank you, Brock. Welcome to the stage. And Katarina, please share this article.
Yeah, thank you. I thought this was kind of really a very interesting bet from Microsoft, and I didn't hear it being discussed a lot in the news, so I thought it would be interesting to share. So, we've been all dreaming about nuclear fusion for many decades, and Microsoft apparently thinks that technology is nearly ready to plug into the grid. Microsoft just signed a jaw-dropping agreement to purchase electricity from a nuclear fusion generator. It's called the Holy Grail of energy because it's potentially limitless source of clean energy that scientists have been chasing for the better part of a century. And a company called Helion Energy thinks it can deliver that holy grail to Microsoft by 2028. It announced a power purchase agreement with Microsoft this morning that would see it plug into the world's first commercial fusion generator to a power grid in Washington. The goal is to generate at least 50 megawatts of power, a small but significant amount, more than 42 megawatts, and that the US first two offshore wind farms have the capacity to generate today. To say that's a tall order would be an understatement of the year. I would say it's the most audacious thing I've ever heard, says University of Chicago theoretical physicist Robert Rosner. In these kinds of issues, I will never say never, but it would be astonishing if they would succeed. Experts' optimistic estimates for when the world might see its first nuclear fusion power plant range from the end of the decade to several decades from now. Helion's success depends on achieving remarkable breakthroughs in an incredibly short span of time and then commercializing its technology to make it cost competitive with other energy sources. Nevertheless, Helion is unfazed. There's a binding agreement that has financial penalties if we can't build a fusion system. Helion founder and CEO David Kirtley tells The Verge, "We've committed to be able to build a system and sell it commercially to Microsoft." How might a fusion system work? Simply put, nuclear fusion mimics the way stars create their own light and heat. In our sun, hydrogen nuclei fuse together, creating helium and generating a tremendous amount of energy. And without having the issue of, nuclear waste. Scientists have been trying to replicate this process in a controlled way since the 1950s. This is the opposite of nuclear power plants we have today that release energy through fission or splitting atoms apart. A major downside of fission is that it leaves behind unstable nuclei that can stay radioactive for millions of years. Fusion avoids the radioactive waste problem because it's essentially just creating new helium atoms. The most advanced attempts at generating electricity through nuclear fusion involve shooting powerful laser beams at a tiny target or relying on magnetic fields to confine superheated matter called plasma with a machine called a tokamak. And we had here a speaker, if you missed that room, that collaborated with Google AI researchers to kind of come up with the ideal shape of these plasmas to improve basically the reaction in the tokamak. It was a really interesting room that we had here, and invite you listening to it. So Helion uses so the company is developing a 40-foot device called a plasma accelerator that heats fuel to 100 million degrees Celsius. It heats deuterium and helium-3 into a plasma and then uses pulsed magnetic fields to compress the plasma until fusion happens. The company has a YouTube video that's in the article that illustrates the process in detail, and Helium claims that the machine should eventually be able to recapture the electricity used to trigger the reaction, which can be used to recharge the device's magnet. We electrically recover all the energy we put into the fusion so that we can actually build systems that are smaller and cheaper, and we can iterate on them a lot quicker. This is an exciting announcement, and many in the community will be keen to see technical details, says MIT School of Engineering distinguished professor Anne White in an email to The Verge. So, yeah, they're waiting for them to publish their work so that they can analyze it. And in December, lasers achieved a huge breakthrough called fusion ignition, meaning that for the first time, researchers were able to trigger fusion reaction that resulted in a net energy gain. That's a major milestone Helion has yet to accomplish, though. Well, anyways, I think it was, and if that works, it can solve so many problems. Especially, it can be scaled. If it can be scaled, you know, we can do carbon capture cheap, we can clean up the environment in a cheap way, and produce clean energy for everyone very cheap, so that it would basically become kind of a free essential source everyone has available, and go from there. I mean, it would be amazing. I crossing fingers that Microsoft bets actually, is a sound one.
So isn't helium-3 only obtained in space, not on Earth? It's like something that we've gathered from the moon, actually. So isn't it extremely expensive per quantitative unit? It's extremely expensive. Just from my understanding, I don't even know what's real, to tell you the truth, as a physicist. I don't know what's real because all
So,
the information is so weird.
helium, it's produced on Earth from three sources: lithium, spallation, cosmic rays, and beta decay from tritium.
But we don't get much
Again,
cosmic
very
rays underneath our atmosphere.
So if we're not going to be speaking actual numbers with data, what we often find here in this space is when we talk about any type of what we might call alternative or clean energy, that often people want to come up and say, that's really expensive. But if we consider things that we've also been talking about, health risks, emotional health risks, physical health risks, livelihood, then these are things that really are worth comparison. So sure, thank you for skepticism. It's always important. And at the same time, we're exploring this technology. Yes, I'm sure it's lots of money. And the costs of people's entire lives, children who are growing up with asthma, Dr. Heidi mentioned diabetes. This list goes on and on. So yes, I'm sure lots of room for skepticism. Let's move forward and let's hear about how it can be applied, the uses, what other things it can replace. The benefits of that are amazing and really exciting to consider.
Madam, may I ask just one more question, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, I'm an experimental physicist working in experimental space and aerospace, and I've written formulas. I now study neuroscience to the tooth. 6 hours a day studying neuroscience. How do I not deserve to be here?
Well, nobody said that you nobody like we are inclusive. um, you don't have to have a PhD like me or probably you to be here. You don't have to be a medical doctor or engineer. The we just like to hear actual facts and just bring in your doubts. It's good, but then if we ideally can have add some facts to it, that would be great. So I shared in the chat a bunch of two links where sources could be coming from in the future for industrial helium-3. And there will be a projected helium shortage. Tritium right now is the only industrial source so far, but they are discussing in the last paper I shared, 25 and 50% of the helium shortage could be addressed with different methods, and yeah, one includes lunar mining, but it also includes natural gas extraction. Could be helium-3 could be produced with. So yeah, there are different papers discussing this, that we also have to address that in the future. But
You guys side with people that have disabilities? Because I have a disability, like a mental disability.
we don't side or unside with anyone. It's just, you're welcome to share your thoughts, and yeah, and we are here to discuss all of these right now science news, and usually we invite then the actual scientists that are working on these different projects to then give a more traditional talk. So these are the type of rooms we have here in this club, so feel free to participate.
Yeah, I mean, how many PhDs does a person have? I don't know. Because most people like Victoria or Joyce don't put their
We're really not
PhDs.
here to talk personal. Like, we talk about science and not about personal stuff so much. I'm sorry. It's not, about different egos, hopefully, in this room. That's certainly what we don't want to do.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Katarina. Go ahead.
Yeah, because for that, I think, at least myself, we could have just stayed at, myself at NYU or, wherever, and continue just discussing it with PhDs there, but that's not the purpose of this club, at least not why I founded it, to have like some egos and elitarism. For sure that's not what we want, and we don't usually discuss too much personal issues because that just leads to conflicts that are unnecessary. Okay, so to have kind of
Katerina, can I say something quickly?
Yeah,
please go ahead.
please, Dr.
Sorry
Martin.
for the interruption, because I love this house, and before it was a house, I love the Science Society when it was just a club. What I love about it, and I feel I'm doing a marketing segment here about this club, that the academic essence, and the academic essence has to do nothing with titles. It's not with PhD or masters or academic accreditation or certification or registrations we have. It's all about facts, and everyone working in the academia have this built in his mind that he has to talk with fact, not like the ChatGPT first version and second version. And you do this by referencing and try to actually find the true academics, people who work on the field, and they are having labs and they having publications, and spreading rumors here. Like, there are many rooms talking about science in Clubhouse, but they don't have the level of professionalism like the Science Society. And that's what I like about this place, that I can take away some of the recommendations here to the real life on real field research and in my lab and work on it, because I trust the reference, I trust who is talking. And the other side as well, it's sometimes as a scientist, we've been taking in the area of philosophy, and philosophy, we all agree it's the mother of science. That's why we have the PhD, which is the philosophy doctorate. It has lots of philosophy, but sometimes it's not having these grounded facts which we need in our research and in real life work. So I applaud you and Victoria and Joyce for keeping this place professional, academic, and a trusted reference for all of us. Thank you, and sorry for interruption.
Oh, please, Dr. Heidi, it's a contribution. We would never call it an interruption. And I appreciate that. And it's important to us that people recognize that this space is, we exist to help eliminate barriers between people and science, and bring in people and mention the degrees of the speakers that are invited here, because they're representing their research, and we're honoring them when we mention their background and their educational background and their accomplishments. As far as us and people who are speaking and people who are welcome on stage, that has nothing to do with anyone's educational background. It has to do with the desire to learn and share our love of science and sharing information. And that's why we're here. So I appreciate, Dr. Heidi, that you were mentioning that, and I hope that people will continue to come and contribute and give ideas. If you have ideas to share as far as articles that you would like to hear, topics that you would like to hear, then we're interested in all of that. So thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So, I had a couple more articles because there is so much every week, and maybe we can do one danger one, and um, and maybe then after that a cool one, to kind of end on a positive note. So, this one I think was really interesting. I think it's good to know, basically. Um, b- Talking about being educated in risk factors, um, that we don't know about, that could be going on. So, hidden danger of muscle fat. Um, Myostasis, or high muscle fat accumulation in asymptomatic adults, significantly increases the risk of major health issues and mortality. According to a study in Radiology, the risk, so the journal name is Radiology. The risk was independent of age or obesity markers like BMI, and was comparable to risk from smoking or type 2 diabetes. Asymptomatic adults with high accumulation of fat in their muscles are at an increased risk of major adverse events and death. Um, And one of the methods used by physicians to estimate body fat in patients is the BMI, and it's really not accurate reflection of body composition because patients with similar BMIs can have vastly different comorbidities and levels of health risk. A more thorough reflection of body composition can be obtained from abdominal CT or MRI scans, which can reveal a variety of different fat accumulations. And mostly the medical community focuses on visceral fat, which is fat that accumulates around abdominal organs, and liver steatosis, which is a high amount of fat in the liver. Another form of fat is dysmiosteosis, which occurs when fat accumulates in the muscles, and it's usually found in patients who are already sick and undergoing medical imaging for another illness. Little is known about its health risk in asymptomatic patients. So you really need to use a CT or MRI to study this, and the colleagues that did the study sought to identify the association between osteosis and mortality risk while simultaneously studying visceral fat, liver cirrhosis, myopenia, muscle wasting, and obesity. And in the retrospective study, the researchers used an AI tool to extract body composition metrics from abdominal CT scans in asymptomatic adults who had undergone a routine screening for colorectal cancer between 2004 and 2016. Incidences of major adverse events such as heart attack, stroke, or aneurysm, and death were recorded during an average follow-up period of 8.8 years. On the 8,982 adults included in the study, a total of 507 died during the follow-up period. Mysteriosis was associated with an increased risk of major adverse events and was found in 55% of the study participants who died. The absolute mortality risk at 10 years in individuals with mysteriosis was 15.5 compared to obesity 7.6, liver cirrhosis 8.5, or myopenia 9.7. While the presence of other health factors such as visceral fat and liver cirrhosis were also associated with higher mortality risk, mysteriosis remained the highest. Interestingly, the relationship was independent from age or markers of obesity such as BMI. In other words, this means that fat accumulations in the muscles is not merely explained by being older or having fat overload in other locations of the body. So the mortality of patients with mycosis was comparable to mortality risk associated with smoking and having type 2 diabetes. Despite the growing evidence of the risk factors that are associated with it, it is a condition that is still overlooked in the medical community. So we are witnessing the onset of personalized medicine, whose aim is to tailor medical management at the individual level based on a constellation of information such as genetics, medical history, physical characteristics, complex and large-scale molecular evaluation. Here we show that mycosis, a parameter retrievable from medical images performed routinely in hospitals, is a robust indicator of individuals' mortality risk as a relatively short term. AI-based CT body composition identifies mycosis as key mortality predictor in asymptomatic adults, as the title of the paper. And it was done at the University of Wisconsin Medicine. So yeah, it's really interesting. I don't think they go into if there's a genetic factor and how to avoid it. For now, it's just it's like the first type of study going into this would be interesting, how people can address this muscle fat, and if there's maybe a genetic test you could do to predict that people will have that, and yeah, and how to kind of change that. But that, I guess, will come in the future, but it's a good start. Thank Thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess I didn't catch it if it's in there, but basically they have no idea why some people have it and some don't, basically at this point.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't go into that yet. I guess that will be the follow-up study. Hopefully, it will be the follow-up study.
So we don't know if we have it, and we don't show risk factors, and we don't show symptoms. Was this the
Yes,
good news or the bad news article, Katarina?
that was a bad news one. But hopefully it will turn in the future to a good news one, because hopefully they will find, I don't know, genetic factors, whatever it is that leads to this, in the future, solving this puzzle.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah. Go ahead.
these new methods that are coming out that people get, whole body MRIs and personalized medicine that people are doing. I didn't catch it. Would that sort of thing detect it, or it's a specialized method of detecting it?
No, I think any CT scan can do it because they did it backwards. I know exactly why they did it backwards. I don't know if you did ever ethical um if you ever wrote a protocol to get ethical approval for studies. And it's way easier if you can go backwards, because anything that could predict mortality, especially in mental health, you never want to go forward, because then you have the problem that if you can maybe predict, let's say, suicide or here mortality, you have to warn the patients, but you're actually still doing the study, so you don't know if you should warn the patient and what it will do to the patient's mental health if you would tell now, these people that have the fat, and you don't know yet, you didn't finish the study, what will you do? And answering those ethical questions will be impossible. You will never get approval. So ideally, if you can, you do it backwards. That's why they did it. And that was the only way to do the study. So apparently you can just use a CT scan that was done from your abdomen, and then you can check for the muscle fat.
Katarina, a very close friend of mine, a genetic counselor, and I applaud what you said, because what you said in the last 2 minutes, it's really what's happening on real life in hospitals. They have this ethical and moral frameworks and protocols which they cannot cross. On the same time, they know and predict, and they have prediction models, and they know what's going on. And it's all about the common sense. This is again one of the things which AI cannot actually replace a genetic counselor, because it's having a lot of human essence and human element that cannot replace a judge. So there are lots of things with big human essence in it which cannot be replaced. So thank you again for the flow of ideas and thoughts.
If I had to make a guess, I would say it'll turn out that inflammation is related to this because it is to almost everything. Anyway.
Agree strongly, Joyce. Agree.
Okay, yeah. So, if you have a CT scan at any point, check your muscle fat, I would say. Ask your doctor to check. I know I did some. I should ask at some point back in time. I should ask.
Either ask them or don't until they know more.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's exactly. We had discussions like this during like trainings of, ethical protocols, but also during our PhD training, we had this ethical classes, and things like this were discussed. Like, do you tell a patient that has this genetic ALS, like, for sure that patient will, decline health and die at like 40, but you can't do anything about it. What do you do? Like, do you tell the patient? Do you not tell the patient? If you tell the patient, do you want to know? Then you kind of already told the patient. It's really hard if you can't do anything about it. Do you want to know or you don't want to know? I don't know.
Out of curiosity and fun, I will send you some of the medical exams, the medical entry exams for graduate entry and undergrad, and it's weighing 70% of the medical exams in Australia. In order to get into medicine, 70% of it's actually scenarios about the ethical and moral frameworks, and 30% on actual cell level and physiology and the other areas of medicine, which is quite interesting. So I'll send you some of those funny scenarios, which every one of the scenarios can be a room by itself, and you will hear different opinions, and there is no right and wrong. It's all common sense, and it's all using the regulations the right way, and you get it by experience and metacognition and comprehension. So I will do this. Thank you, Katerina.
Yeah, and that's why when you get, I have signed up for genetic tests like, well, there's 23andMe, and then I've signed up for the All of Us study, and I should say everyone should join that if they can. They're trying to get 1 million people to help gather a lot of data. Well, this is just in the US. But anyway, yeah, and they give you a long discussions because before they even decide or before they send you any information, they try to prepare you, you know. And in this case, it's okay because, they don't really know your results yet. So it's not like them asking you is kind of giving it away or anything.
Yeah, so I thought this was a really cool new technology. And yeah, I didn't have a chance this week to write to any of the authors, but I think it would be cool to get these here. I think that I don't know if everyone agrees that this is um, a positive story. So researchers have created a device that emulates the human's eye ability to see color by narrowband perovskite photodetectors and a neuromorphic algorithm. The photodetectors sensitive to red, green, and blue light mimic our own cone cells, while the neuromorphic algorithm simulates our neural network to process information into high-quality images. Unlike modern cameras that require external filters, this technology could improve resolution and reduce manufacturing costs. The device also generates electricity as it absorbs light, potentially leading to battery-free camera technology. So the new device developed by Penn State researchers simulates the human eye ability to perceive color by using narrowband perovskite photodetectors. This technology might bypass the need for filters used in current cameras, which reduce resolution and add to manufacturing complexity and cost, and it generates power, so you don't need batteries. And they draw the inspiration from nature. Um, we borrowed a design from nature. Our retinas contain cone cells that are sensitive to red, green, and blue light, and a neural network that starts processing what we are seeing even before the information is transmitted to our brain. says Kai Wang, assistant research professor in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at Penn State. This natural process creates a colorful world we can see. To achieve this in an artificial device, the scientists created a new sensor array from narrowband perovskite photodetectors which mimic our cone cells and connected to a neuromorphic algorithm. The photodetectors convert light energy into electrical signals and are essential for cameras and other optical technologies. Um, in this work, we found a novel way to design perovskite material that's sensitive to only one wave of light. We created 3 different types, and they are designed in a way that they can only be sensitive to red, green, or blue colors. The silicon photodetectors in cameras absorb light but don't distinguish colors, and these can, so there are no external filters needed. And when the light is filtered, there is some loss of information and this can be avoided in our design. So we propose this work may represent a future camera sensing technique that can help people to get a higher spatial resolution. And the device structure is similar to solar cells that use light to generate electricity. Once you shine a light on it, it will generate a current, so like our eyes, you don't need to apply energy to capture this information from light. This research could also trigger a few further developments in artificial retina biotechnology. Devices based on this technology could someday replace dead or damaged cells in our eyes to restore vision, according to the scientists. And this was published in the Journal of Science Advances. Perovskites are semiconductors, and when light hits these materials, it creates electron hole pairs. Sending these electrons and holes in opposite directions is what generates this electrical current. In the study, the scientists created thin film perovskites with heavily unbalanced electron hole transport, meaning the holes are moving through the material faster than the electrodes. By manipulating the architecture of this imbalance, or how the layers are stacked, the scientists found they could harness properties that turn the materials into narrowband photodetectors. They created then the sensor array with these materials and used a projector to shine an image through the device. Information collected in the red, green, and blue layers was fed into a 3-sub-layer neuromorphic algorithm for signal processing and image reconstruction. The neuromorphic algorithms are a kind of computing technology that seeks to emulate the operation of the human brain. We tried different ways to process the data. We tried directly merging the signals from the 3 color layers, but the picture was not very clear. But when we do this neuromorphic processing, the image is much closer to the original. Because the algorithms mimic the neural network in human retinas, the findings could provide new insights into the importance of these neural networks to our vision, the scientists say. By joining our device and this algorithm together, we can demonstrate that the neural network functionality is really important in the vision processing in human eyes. Yeah, I thought this was a really cool new invention, and artificial retinas are something that can really improve lives, and also have cameras or sensors that are free of energy supply without cables and so on, will help a lot of people that maybe don't have a stable supply of electricity all the time. I think this is really wonderful, and I hope this technology, like the principle, will be used in other edge technologies. to run more of the edge devices in a way that they can supply their own energy. I think that would be wonderful. So, and hi, only welcome.
Thanks for welcoming me. Yeah, I was just listening right now. We'll talk. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to add something to this one.
Well, it is exciting. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing.
I had one more a Nature article, but
Go
somehow,
for it.
yeah, I'm trying to open it and access it. Let me try one more time. I have lately, I wrote Nature, then that my access didn't work, and then they fixed it. And now let me try with Chrome. And that was working, and now apparently something is going on again. It's really annoying.
Okay, so this one is the bedtime story. It's the positive, another positive story.
Okay, yeah, now I just need to access it. And if people need then the full story, let me know. I can send a PDF if I can access my account. Okay.
Are you able to access it, or is it a problem on your end that would be helped if
Oh yeah,
someone
now
else?
it's on Chrome. It works. Now I have access through, my institution, but it stopped working, and then I wrote them, and then they fixed it, and then it worked again, and now it doesn't work on Safari, but it works on Chrome. So yeah.
Oh, so there's nothing to pin, is what you're saying?
No, I have it.
Okay.
It's just people won't see the full article, but if they want to have it, just reach out to me and I can send the PDF. It's not a problem. So, gut microbes eat nanoparticles leading to microbiome changes. Human can accidentally ingest nanomaterials in consumer products with unknown effects. And bacteria in the digestive tract can break down ingested carbon nanomaterials, according to research in mice. The researchers also hint that the excessive amounts of fatty acids formed by this breakdown could inhibit the normal function of the animal's intestinal stem cells. Nanomaterials such as carbon nanotubes and graphene measure less than 100 nanometers in at least one dimension and are being increasingly found in consumer products. People can unwittingly ingest these materials, raising concerns about their safety. For insights on the material's fate in the gut, Chuanjing Kui at the National Center for Nanoscience and Technology of China in Beijing and her colleagues fed small amounts of carbon nanotubes and graphene oxide flakes to mice every day for 28 days. They found that treated mice had significantly more of the fatty acid butyrate in their guts than did untreated mice, and is normally produced when gut bacteria ferment high-fiber foods. Bacteria grown in nanomaterial-laced medium also have elevated bacterial level. The nanomaterials altered the rodent's gut microbiomes, boosting the growth of the specific type of bacteria at the expense of other microbes. What it then will do to us, it's unknown yet. It's just they just show that it will change basically the composition of the gut microbiome, and but this is a huge finding that wasn't done before. that these nanoparticles get incorporated into the metabolic carbon flow in gut microbiota for the production of short chain fatty acids, which then influences the gut homeostasis. Um, so it could become a health risk, and there's an urgent need for assessing the transformation of these nanoparticles and their health risk via the gut-centric physiological and anatomical pathway. Yeah, so this is kind of concerning, and yeah, I hope based on this study, there will be more studies in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to guess whether microbes would metabolize them and feed on them, I would guess yes, because they do on everything, it seems. Uh, but, of course, they have to show it. So, anyway, that's interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, this is very concerning. I'm also thinking about what is the origin of the nanoparticles and how many substances act as hormone disruptors, and the information that we're learning about just how much we're affected by our gut microbiome health, and how that has implications for our mental health as well, and um, just on and on. We've seen research about nanoparticle injection in ocean life, and it's showing up in fish, and so here we are, part of this nanoparticle ingestion fest as well. Like in the sea, it's because of so much dumping, and here it's just things that are. I'm sure this is even things like nanoparticles used as pigment in makeup, for example. Or any product. Health, hair care, skincare products, and then soft plastics, and just it's endless where this is on our environment. Oh yeah, this is a good one that you're about to share. I'd read this. Let's just eat plants, I don't understand why we need lab-grown meat really in the first place, because plants taste so great, and there's just so many things. There's so much food that we can eat that isn't flesh. But go ahead with this lovely article, Katarina.
Yeah, I don't know how this will change like over time with scaling and, making processes more efficient and better and cleaner. But a lot of the negative things I never really understood because, I worked in different types of settings and cell cultures, neural cultures, and I worked for a company for a while to help consulting that does 3D printing of organs and have clinical trials going on. And you have to realize that the cells you grow, they don't have an immune system. They just grow by themselves. So anything in the air, any tiny little fungi, spore, one little bacteria can just go crazy on this and on your growing cell system, because you of course give the cells all the nutrients they need to grow well and to do well and grow fast. But these are the same things, bacteria and fungi and all these other bad things basically. Like, so, and they don't have an immune system, so you need to constantly protect them. A lot of labs use always antibiotics. I didn't used to do that, and you need to use a lot of energy to disinfect, sterilize everything. You have to be completely sterile. The air has to be completely sterile. Constantly you have to use bleach and ethanol and all kinds of stuff to be the fake immune system. So a lot of chemicals is not healthy for the people that are working in this constantly, and in this gas of bleach and ethanol and all kinds of stuff. After a while, I just couldn't do this work anymore. I would get migraines all the time due to oversen, and my asthma would get really bad. So it's really not, it's really not a healthy environment for anyone, because you artificially have to protect these cells from what usually in a whole organism an immune system would take care of. So anyways, and this study just suggests that lab-grown meat produces up to 25 more CO2 because of all those things I told you. Um, um, and for them, apparently, it's really shocking. A shocking new study suggests that lab-grown meat could actually be far worse for the environment than traditional livestock. You also have all these dishes that you have to just throw out because you couldn't possibly risk the contamination. And all the tools you need come from a company that has to sterilize them, um, and package them individually. So every single pipette you use um, is individually sealed and packed in plastic, and you use it to feed the cells one time, and you throw it out because you can't possibly risk to contaminate any of your samples with this, because then it just spreads throughout your whole incubator. It's like a huge waste of trash and plastic and I don't know. By the study's estimate, if current techniques were scaled up to supply the market, they could produce between 4 and 25 times more CO2 than rearing and slaughtering animals. Through the study has not been peer reviewed, but I think it's very logical, and yeah, I would even assume that it's worth that if you include all the trash you produce, all the plastic trash and so on. Animal cell culture is traditionally done with growth medium components which have been refined. Yeah, additionally, also the growth media have to be sterilized and refined, um, and these refinement methods contribute significantly to the economic and environmental costs associated with pharmaceutical products, since they are both energy and resource intensive. Assuming the continued use of highly refined growing media, the researchers estimate that each kilogram of these cell culture produced meats produce 542 pounds, 248 kilograms to 3,325 pounds, or 1.5 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions. Based on these figures, they calculate the global warming potential of culture meat is between 4 and 25 times greater than that of retail beef. So they didn't even include everything else. They just include the media that you use to feed them. They don't include all the bleach you use, all the individually sterilized tools you use and just throw out, and the incubators that you have to use. Also the gas, it has to have a specific gas mixture that you feed the incubators. They have a higher CO2 in there for the pH level to adjust, so they don't include that. And they don't include, when you feed them, that you have to be in a specific um, um, hood that consumes energy, and all the UV lamps to disinfect everything. So they didn't even include everything. So it's even way higher than that. That's my opinion. But anyways, yeah, it's pretty silly. Just do, things like the previous articles we discussed. look at nature, use how nature does things, and then make technology out of that, and that you don't need, for example, a camera that needs energy supply and batteries. You just use the system of the eye, and you will have a high resolution camera where you don't need filters, and that on top even supplies its own energy. Like, do it that way.
Yeah, I like the one that's already come out in some of the fast food places. I think they call it Impossible Burger, or is that Beyond Burger or something? I think it tastes better than hamburger, but I don't really typically eat it. But yeah, to me it did seem kind of a reach to go for this culture idea. Yeah, and then the other people say too that if you raise the animals naturally and ethically, and then you don't need to feel too bad about it, especially if it's a regenerative agriculture or something like that. So anyway, there's lots of possibilities. Or you can make your own burgers, or just forget about burgers.
Well, a lot of problem also, Katarina, I'm sure we're all believers now, what you just said. It's so sensible. And I wouldn't have, yeah, when I first saw that article, I was really curious, but everything that you've listed, it makes so much sense to be that you have to create an artificial immune system. But also, Joyce, you make me think of the idea of scale is really part of the problem, that it's the scale, it's economic scale. If we have small farmers, small family farms, that's one thing, but large organizations trying to create just massive demands of scale, then what's required to produce that is going to be destructive to someone's environment. So it's things, there are a lot of things, a lot of crossover, and yeah, I agree. Eat plants. They're really, really yummy. Thank you, Katarina. So interesting.
Or at least if you eat meat, maybe not as much as a lot of people do. Make it more special occasion, or not 3 meals a day and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Artemisia says in the chat, local, real food. You know, local. It makes a huge difference. And yes, we could go on and about this topic. Welcome up, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for. Can you guys hear me all right here? Actually, I have these. I'm talking through headphones, and I might not have the microphone out. Can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Hello, hello.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Thanks for a wonderful room. I just had an interesting thought about this paper that I decided to share. I'll share. Uh, I wonder, because I was reading the idea of these endotoxins also being damaging to the cell culture of this lab grown meat concept. It sounds to me like maybe that it could be seen where the endotoxins are functioning like an immune system for the individual bacterium. And what if you could change the environment through, like, going back to like plasma pressure technologies, where you actually restrict the boundary conditions within which things can grow, so you have like this dualistic procedure where as things are growing, you're also controlling the growth from basically from two different angles, like using like a bilinear vector. So it's an idea.
And what are the two angles? Thank you. This is all wonderful.
Like the so one the like one vector would be the amount the rate of growth of the culture with the available whatever the if there's electroculture involved, or if it's just natural uh, chemical growth. And then, but if you could use, if it could be done in like a plasma, like some type of chamber where you're using some type of algorithmically structured plasma pressure can basically reverse the vector of like a bacteria producing an endotoxin. So you sort of keep the even if there's a bacteria that's contaminated the meat, like, but you restrict it from moving by having like pressure put basically on like these predictive vectors that puts pressure on the exterior growth of the system, like external pressure on the system, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think I know I understand where you're coming from, and I think there is for sure potential for making this um more intelligent, this growing systems, and maybe even coming up with I would say, you could use, you know, a computation to maybe create an ideal artificial immune system with co-cultures of immune cells instead of doing it the way we currently doing it. But then you cut down basically on the amount of cells you can grow that you actually want to harvest, and then taking out the immune cells and just harvest the cells that are good for, the beef would be maybe a challenge. But there could be ways of doing co-cultures to have them kind of separate, but still emitting enough of immune signals that you could downregulate all the very expensive um yeah this artificial, very sterile environment. There's for sure, I would say the person that would be probably really great helping to design this is our speaker that is coming tomorrow, Mike Levin. He basically combines like uh, organisms and designs them with AI to do specific tasks. The size of the cell and the shape of the cell and so on. To basically, and then he gives these cells tasks, and then they perform them the best. Basically, he makes like he uses evolutionary algorithms to make models first, and then try them out in the lab. So I think like this type of approach could maybe make this growing meat and in the lab better and better for the environment, but we would need a lot of um, innovation to do that. But I agree, Kyle. I think we if we want to really go forward with this, we would need collaboration from a lot of different fields of engineering, like really engineering a more efficient lab, and then also engineering cells better, and an artificial immune system better, and so on. Or we can use seaweed that tastes like bacon. I don't know what happened to this company, but there was a company that developed, I pinned it on top, that made the seaweed type that tastes like bacon and has a higher nutritional value of kale. I don't know what exactly the value is, but because I read this a long, long time ago, but I wanted to share it.
Has anybody happened to have ever heard of any type of, and this is definitely not an area of expertise for me by any means at all, but is there any type of, like, I'm imagining like a gel or some type of like material that it could be a buffer so that it could just almost coat a meat culture, a cell culture, and control its growth rate, even though you're trying to maximize it, but prevent like divergent vectors. Like that's a lot what I've worked with is like the idea of scalar divergences, where there's limits to like there's this like hypercircularity concept where there's limits to scalar divergences before there's reconvergences, and then the reconvergences are basically have vector divergence, but the vector divergence is entropy, and the entropy is basically just a three-dimensional version of this, and its interactions are also bounded by like hypercircularity principles. So you can create this zone basically where you can have these like bilinear vectors that but the either side of a boundary condition can have asymptotic freedom, and you can basically treat any boundary as a null boundary. And if you had some type of even maybe like just a specific material, I wonder that and maybe this will be something I could talk with. I think you said his name was Mike tomorrow. I might be wrong on that, but something that's it could maybe just that simple that just like functions like a an edge, like I could see like bleach coming in as like an edge computation situation from my perspective, where it's just like, okay, the two chemicals are limiting each other's activity here. The bleach is winning, but can you create a low cost, like very efficient situation where you basically have a chemical that functions like this paranormal boundary to allow the desired action to occur in the shortest amount of energy, like energy distribution, I guess, in terms of like the cost that's going into it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting and to see it that way because, as a biologist, you're kind of stuck in your own ways, and it's really helpful to talk then with somebody like you that kind of has a very different approach of this type of problem solving. And I think there's a lot that we can improve by collaborating more. And I think, yeah, you should come to the room tomorrow. It's at 3 p.m. EST. I don't know if you can make it, but would be interesting to ask him and talk with him directly because um, he for sure tried out some things that, you know, I never asked him this type of question, but maybe he tried a few approaches like this, and he could answer you, from like really trying it out in a lab if this line of thinking, works then in real life. So it would be an interesting discussion. So I invite you to come and I think, yeah, it was a really great room. It's getting really late for me. It's almost 12. And I had a great time, very different types of discussions. And I'm looking forward to the next one, like to the next week Science News one, but also to the room tomorrow. I hope people can come. It will be a really interesting discussion. And Carl, you should ask him this question. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I just want to say, I kind of find it hard to believe that there's a seaweed that tastes like bacon. I really never tasted seaweed that I liked.
Oh my gosh,
Anyway,
really? What, you haven't had those, there's dried seaweed packets. They're a little bit salty, and it's sort of
yeah,
put together like a little snack, and
still don't like them.
it's or not, you don't like, okay, all right, I won't push it. But maybe one day you'll develop a taste. Yeah, Kyle, I wanted to repeat what Katarina said, that your approach is just so interesting, and it just speaks to why we have these rooms, because we see things from different angles, and you're coming from a really maybe a math driven angle when you're looking at this, and you know, and I'm listening to different parts of the science that, you know, in that other article that we were discussing. So it's just all kinds of minds, all different perspectives. It makes this space more interesting. And so, yeah, thank you for being here and coming up on stage. And anyone who's here now, audience, thank you for being here. And if you'd like to come up on stage and share some thoughts next time, we hope to see you next Wednesday, 6 o'clock PST or 9 o'clock EST or whatever your GMT is. And yeah, can't wait to share more science with you all. And if you're available tomorrow, be here. I will be in class, but I'll be with you in spirit.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, check out the calendar of the club. We'll have, yeah, as I said, tomorrow, Professor Levin, and then we'll have um on Monday Dr. ELP talking about the warming of the Arctic and its effect of the larginus rivers in the warming Arctic, and what those effects then will be. Then we'll have Dr. Mertens, um, which he will give a really interesting talk also. So yeah, just check out the calendar. Um, uh, we have many rooms in May, a little bit less in June, and then July I'll see. We for sure have the science newsrooms, but um, I'm gonna travel, and I don't know how my time zone will be. So anyways, yeah. So Dr. Martens, she created a synthetic black hole in the lab that radiates, and she will share her work on that. And then I'm gonna travel, but we will still have a room on this neuromorphic learning and metaplasticity. You know, we talked in the article before about the artificial retina and how using neuromorphic approach was really important for that. And the whole team will come talking about new types of neuromorphic learning and creating this metaplasticity, which is really important. Um, and yeah, and then we'll have more rooms, a few rooms in June so far. So yeah, join us, and I hope to hear you all back again. Okay, I'll close the room.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Victoria, as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Fun discussion.
Close the room in 3, 2, 1. Bye, everyone. Thank you.